rain! Rain, we got rain coming! Okay, welcome to this week's episode of Luv Subbin. And where are we this week?
We are in Syracuse, New York.
In Syracuse, specifically on the shores of Lake Onondaga. And why are we here in Syracuse?
We are looking for salt.
Syracuse used to produce upwards of 90% of the salt in our nation. And so we're going to go ahead and explore the history of the salt.
And it was also called Salt City, too.
And we'll probably even hit one of their local cuisines, the salt potato, which resulted actually from the production of salt, which we're going to go ahead and check out in the museum.
So we're going to have to hurry before we get wet.
So interestingly here, the salt was never actually mined like I kind of thought it was, like with salt mines and stuff like that.
It was actually tapped from an underground spring, a saltwater spring.
So they had this saltwater spring that the Onondaga Indians had first discovered, and eventually that became the source of the brine that would be boiled in these big, huge boiling blocks, they called them.
Or eventually evaporated in the sun.
Yes, but the boiling blocks were used, you can see that behind us here, and they would have these large kettles. They'd have a fire in the blocks here with a chimney at the end, and that would absolutely heat the kettles up until the point that there was nothing left but the salt, and then they would go ahead and dry what was remaining of it, and that became the salt production.
They started off with wood, and when wood got too expensive, they moved to coal, and eventually they went to solar-powered and evaporation.
Yes, and the peak production of salt from the Onondaga salt evaporation areas was 1862. Which kind of makes sense if you think that all of a sudden you needed a whole lot of salt for the preservation of meats going on for the Civil War.
Yes, correct. But this also spurred some interest in the Erie Canal in order to get this product out into the East Coast.
Yep. And what did you say, something like 95%?
No, it was about 90% of all the salt that in the United States for one point in the history of the United States was produced here in Syracuse.
Wow, that is pretty impressive.
It is. So the salt season was from April until November, and stopped because basically everything started to freeze.
Right.
But this is an example of the fireplaces. And interesting enough, these covers on these fireplaces are operated on a pulley system, a weight system. But they would stoke these with either coal or wood during these hot seasons, and to eventually evaporate the brine in those kettles.
Yeah, they said it was like 90 plus degrees in the boiling houses, with 100% humidity. It was tough work.
Yes, it was tough work.
So we're standing in the part of the museum that represents all the auxiliary industries that cropped up as a result of the salt production. Things like barrel production, blacksmiths, baskets, all the stuff that was needed in order to make the salt production here happen. Salt production kind of petered off in the early 1900s as brines were found in other parts of the state, Texas, Kentucky, that had a much higher salt content and that allowed for more efficient production. They said the final nail in the coffin for the salt industry in this area came in 25, when a hurricane hit the area and wiped out all the solar drying areas for the salt, which is kind of interesting because tomorrow we're going to have Hurricane Debbie, or the remnants of Hurricane Debbie, come up our way. So we'll be experiencing something similar.
But they basically depleted the salt brine here.
Yeah, it was pretty much
depleted,
gone, and there was definitely better areas to get it and more efficient ways to produce the salt than here in this area.
Yeah. So from the very beginning, New York State took their cut from the salt making process.
Really?
They basically owned the land around here, and the people who wanted to make their salt had to lease the land from the New York State. And so this happened for almost the entire process of the salt making industry from 1794 to 1908. So as you can see, it's raining pretty hard outside, and this, when they were doing the solar evaporation process, would cause all the people to be hands on deck to cover all of these areas where the salt was being dried.
Right, it was like dong, alarms would go off, and everybody,
maybe even a bell.
Even children, they'd ring the bell, they'd do all kinds of crazy stuff to get the tarps over there, because obviously with solar, the salt would be exposed to the sun.
Right.
And when it rained, they didn't want it all to get wet because that was the whole point, was to dry it.
Exactly. That would have been, they had to start all over again. So yes, rain was a complete disaster for the solar process. So when they were making the salt using the brining process with the wood and the coal, they would put their potatoes in the brine and make salt potatoes while they were doing the brining process. That was how they cooked their lunches sometimes.
And we're going to go ahead and check out some salt potatoes here in the next couple of minutes, huh?
Yep, we're going to check out one of their local restaurants that serves salt potatoes, and they also have salt potatoes in the grocery store that you can buy as well. So we are on the site of the old Erie Canal, which should not be mistaken with the new Erie Canal, which was what we went on a narrowboat on. This is the old Erie Canal, which was built back in 1825, 1827.
It started in 1817 and was finished in 1825.
And it really opened up the commerce in this area and actually got some of the Syracuse salt out into the East Coast. So they, in many areas, have actually paved over this area. We went and saw a site of the old canal in Utica, and that was all paved over, but right here it's open and you can do a bicycle path on it. It's really very interesting.
And they say the Erie Canal really solidified New York City as a huge commerce port as the system went out through the Hudson to New York City. And then the modern Erie Canal that we went on, the Erie Canal, the Champlain Canal, all of those was completed in 1918. But you can see the original right here.
Yep.
So important to the future of our nation's commerce.
Yep, absolutely. It was really considered a modern day marvel at the time.
So this is pretty cool. This is a 36-mile bike trail that goes along the original Erie Canal that you can take your bike on. And if I'm correct, we were earlier on the Onondaga River. If I'm correct, when we were on our Erie Canal boat, you can check that out here, the vessel that was behind us and following us along that trip was a canal vessel, Onondaga. Okay, so what piece of Americana have we found here?
We are in the Irish district next to Syracuse, and this was a popular Irish district back in the 1920s, and they have a really cool Irish pub down the hill. This is an unusual piece of Americana because it's the only traffic light that is actually turned upside down. The green light is on top, the yellow light is on the middle, and the red light is on the bottom.
And why is that?
And the history of that is, in the 1920s, and when they started putting up traffic signals, the Irish people here did not like the red, which they thought represented the British people, on top of the green light that they thought represented the Irish people. And so the urchins or the kids in the town would start throwing stones at the traffic lights. And so they kept on busting at the traffic lights until they actually agreed to have it put upside down. Pretty awesome.
Okay, so what has just happened?
The power went off, which boggles the mind because we've been pelted with rain all day.
Yeah, it was the remnants of Hurricane it's actually Tropical Storm Debbie now.
And why the power just went off right now, which everything is doing normally outside, is beyond the thing. But anyway.
Well, what's the difference from the last time power went out for us in South Carolina?
We have all the fans running. We have lights. You can actually
fan is running.
See me in the kitchen. So, what do we have today?
So we are in Syracuse, New York, of course, as you've seen from our video. So we have, for tonight's meal,
salted potatoes.
Official salt potatoes.
Which is a dish that they made in Syracuse because they would actually bring in these golden potatoes for lunch and dip them in the brine. We talked about this at the museum.
Yep, we saw that at the museum.
So I'm going to make my own version of this.
We've got some corn and we have some sausage based upon a recommendation from Airstreamer and New Yorker.
Yes.
Who said, go find this family's brand of sausage.
And then that's a local sausage as well, so I think this will be a very good meal. So we're going to start off with the potatoes because they do take about 30 minutes to cook. And also I have to get the water going. So. Okay,
well good. Can we turn some more power on just for giggles?
Yeah.
Actually, we turned the fridge on propane.
Yes, just in case.
Which is now working great. So
which is now working great.
Life is good.
Life is good. So in this bag, there is a package of salt and the proper sized potato for these salted potatoes, and they're about an inch to an inch and a half big, and so you want them to be slightly smaller. If you want to replicate this at home, then this is the size golden potato that you will need. And the salt is a proportional brine, so so
go ahead and turn that light off behind you. And it's not because I'm Ant-Man, it's just crappy for the video. Okay, and that is not because of Ant-Man. That's just, those of you who are viewers will know that that was crappy for the video.
So I'm going to half this recipe, and I'm going to measure out how much salt they put in. So they said put this entire packet of salt in 3 quarts of water. 3 quarts of water? Yeah, 3 quarts of water. I did 1.5 quarts because I don't have a 3-quart pan. So we're going to see how much salt is in here, and we'll see what the proportions are. So I measured out the salt that was provided with the potatoes in the package, and it looks like for 3 quarts of water you use 1 cup of salt, and for the 1.5 quarts of water I'm going to use 1/2 cup of salt. This seems like a lot of salt to be added, and it's supposed to be a brine, but it won't taste salty at the end. So we will see how this turns out. So my brine water is at a boil. I'm ready to drop my potatoes in. Note that I am not cutting into them at all. They're going to stay whole like this, and that will actually help with the skin getting all crisp and the inside getting really nice and tender. So we'll see how this goes. All right, we'll let those go for about 25 minutes and see how they turn out.
So what about the boiling temperature of salted water?
So the boiling temperature of salted water supposedly is 20 degrees higher than the regular boiling point. So we're gonna have to let this come to a boil first, and once it comes to a boil, we can test it out and see if that's indeed the case.
So what would your null hypothesis be?
My null hypothesis would be there's no difference between brined water and regular water as far as the boiling point temperature. So we'll see if we can prove or disprove that.
All right, science.
Science. So our normal temperature for boiling is at 212, and so if this hypothesis is true, then this should be about 232 as the boil. So let's see what happens. We are
boiling.
See what happens.
Anything more than 212, I would say we can reject the null hypothesis.
Well, we're up to 215. That doesn't seem to be a large difference. What do you think? I mean, that's almost improbability of error here.
I don't know. Comment below. Do you think our null hypothesis should be rejected? You could be part of Luv Subbin Science.
Absolutely.
I say reject it.
Okay.
212 is boiling. 215 is more than that.
All right.
So there's a lot of controversy as to how these potatoes should be finished. What's your opinion?
My opinion is I should put myself in the place of the worker who is actually putting his potatoes in the brine. There was opinions that you should do nothing, you should serve them right away. Some of them said you should put them back in the pot and cover them. There were all sorts of endings on this thing, and I just figured, what would I do if I was a worker and I pulled them out? I would just pull them out of the brine and just let them sit and cool. So we're going to accompany our salted potatoes with G&L brand sausage. This is a local sausage made here in Syracuse. So I think this will be an all-around Syracuse kind of dish.
Yeah, we got a tip from one of our friends who is also an Airstreamer who said, this is where you need to go, coupled with our corn.
Yep, this will be on the grill for 20 minutes, 5, 5, and 5, and 5. So 4 5s. So 25 minutes is up, and we're going to test our potatoes to see if they're ready. If the fork goes through smoothly, I think they are considered fork tender. So just a little fork like that, I think they're ready. But notice how the salt got everywhere. Isn't that interesting?
Uh-oh, I think we're going to get some filiform corrosion here on our aluminum backsplash.
I don't know. We better watch for that. So we're going to take these potatoes out and let them sit.
Oh yeah, dog. Those dogs can hunt.
Yep. They look nice and crisp. We're going to put the corn around the perimeter. It's already been cooked for about 20 minutes in the boiling pot. I oiled it and added some salt, pepper, garlic powder, and some smoked paprika. So, should be pretty good. Those are going to go on for about 10 minutes while the sausage finishes. That looks spectacular. I left them out and they sat for about 15 minutes. They're still warm, but notice how encrusted with the salt the skin is.
Holy!
So we're going to find out if they are salty and how they turned out. We're going to serve them up with some butter and some parsley garnish. So we'll see how it does. With
So
this,
So comment below if you ever worked in the salt brining industry and boiled your potatoes for lunch in the salt kettles in Syracuse, and if that's how they turned out.
Yep. So it reminds me of the pasties in Michigan. I think all these workers had these traditions of how they cooked their meals when they were doing this hard work. So I think this is such interesting Americana.
It is.
All right, so we're ready to serve up.
So do you think the people in the salt mines had parsley garni on their potatoes when they were in the salt mines?
Probably not, but I'm wondering if maybe they had some kind of butter. Probably, maybe, somehow, because this is served with butter, so, or they may just had it plain, so we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, they probably just sprinkled dirt on it. Look at all that salt that has encrusted on our Furion stove. I'm hoping this will make it work better if we encrust it in salt. We can't make it work worse. Alright, so normally I do the taste test, but because Cindy is so in tune with the salt book, we're going to let her do the taste test tonight.
We're going to see how it turns out. So we're going to start with the salted potatoes.
You can see the dishes here, how they turned out. They turned out absolutely delicious.
We're going to see if they're too salty, because that would be the question for many. They're not too salty.
Even with that salt crust on them, huh?
What it does, it provides like a salt outside exterior, and the interior is not salted, but it's very, very soft, and so it's a crisp salted outside. It's almost like a French fry, I guess.
Really?
Yeah, it almost reminds me of a French fry.
Okay.
Because it's a salted outside crust, but with a really soft interior. It's really, really good. So we're gonna try the sausage next.
All right, our friend Michael, let's see if you pull through with the sausage.
Looks juicy.
Well, yeah, you know, grill master here.
Yep. I'm gonna try that. This is sweet Italian sausage. It's very, very good. It's very flavorful.
How's the cooking from the chef?
The cooking is very good. It's juicy still.
Good.
But I would say this is a sausage that would be very easy if you overcooked it to dry it out.
Okay. So you're tasting it without accompaniment, but what have we got for accompaniment?
We have this wonderful corn, and we have this horseradish sauce, I guess from Buffalo, correct?
Buffalo, New York. So we're going all out New York, all right?
We are going all out in New York, so we're going to try this with the horseradish sauce as well.
This is upstate New York. This is not New York.
New York, New York, such a wonderful town.
So how does it go with the, so this is a horseradish mustard from Buffalo.
Correct.
Better, or does it accompany it well?
Absolutely really good. It's not actually too hot, because you think horseradish and you think hot, but this is actually a very mild horseradish flavor. So it's actually really good.
All right, so it's all about what we say. Go out, learn about your community's food. You can tell your community by its food, and then cook it. Have a great evening.
Absolutely, this has been fantastic.
So let's take a look at our campground at Green Lake State Park in New York. It's just outside of Syracuse, and it's the closest one to Syracuse, which is why we booked it. And it was funny because I was booking it like the week before, and I figured, during the week it won't be too bad. And I looked, and there was like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday night. And I'm like, sweet! And so I went and yelled Cindy, I'm like, hey, you want to get this? She's like, yeah, go ahead and get this. And in that amount of time, the weekend booked.
Right.
So I lost the weekend, so it's Saturday morning here, we're heading out, but still we had Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday night here. It was great, even though it was Tropical Storm Debbie, kind of wetted everything up.
Yep.
It was $38 a night, $33, but they add $5 for out-of-state residents, which to me is perfectly fine.
Yep.
Full hookups, 30, 50 amp, and you can take a look. We had a nice corner site.
Yes, large
Here,
corner
which was
site.
super. Full hookups at a state park is really, really good for, less than $40 a night.
This is a brand new area in this state park as well.
Yeah, I think this is relatively new. You can look over here. Sites we're in the Pinewood campground, and P1 through 21, I think, are these massive pull-throughs.
Let's take a look.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look. These massive pull-throughs for, you know, that can accommodate the biggest of fifth wheels or Class A's. You can see those just kind of,
Yep.
it's really level. It slopes a little bit, but not too bad.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to experience a lot of the lakes and the hiking and all that other stuff.
And the trails.
But apparently that's pretty good.
It's not too far from the Erie Canal.
Yep. So we'll be back.
Yep.
All right. Well, there you have it. Syracuse and salt. What do you think?
I had a great time here, even though the weather was not as expected, or it was as expected, but it was just a little rainy.
Tropical storm Little Debbie came through.
As with all the places we visit, I feel like I've just scratched the surface.
Yep.
That there's more to see here that we haven't seen yet.
From upside down traffic lights all the way to the queues.
And salt potatoes.
So if you like this video,
Give us a big thumbs up.
and if you think we've earned a subscription, click to subscribe.
And comment below if you've been to Syracuse and what your favorite thing to see was.
Or if ever you've seen an upside down traffic light.
Correct.
Because we come out with RV and Airstream related videos just like this one every Tuesday.
Thanks for watching.